So good afternoon, everyone. Good morning to those joining us out west. I'm Karen Langdon with the National Emergency Management Association. Welcome to the NEMA Empowerment e-learning series. NEMA is very fortunate to include amongst its members some of the most experienced and knowledgeable experts in the emergency management field, and we're excited to bring you this series to help share their wealth of knowledge and work towards a more prepared, resilient, and ready nation. Today, we're happy to present Crisis Response Community Resilience, Funding Strategies That Work, and our deepest appreciation to GoFundMe for their sponsorship of today's session. Thank you for being with us again today, and now it's my pleasure to pass the session to our moderator, Amanda Brown-Lehrman. Welcome, Amanda. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Karen. Thank you so much for having us here today. Good morning, good afternoon, as Tim said, wherever you are in this great country. My name is Amanda Brown-Lehrman, and I am a VP for Impact Policy and Engagement here at GoFundMe. And I am also the Executive Director of GoFundMe.org. And I have probably been in your email inbox before. So it's nice to meet you all. Really grateful for you taking the time to spend with us this afternoon. We know that you have so much on your plates at all of the time. So just really appreciate you making the time to spend it here with us. On today's webinar, we have an incredible lineup for you. So you will first hear from my boss, Tim Cadogan, the CEO of GoFundMe, who will speak about the importance of the super close coordination and communication with state and local leaders and emergency managers like yourselves every day, but particularly during crisis moments. We then will do a behind the scenes look at how GoFundMe works and sort of read you in on our crisis playbook and share more about how we work with local officials to support communities during disaster moments. So you'll get a little bit of a spiel from me about that. And then we have a chance to hear from other incredible leaders. So we have Maribel from 211 LA, Jamie Holman from the Pasadena Humane, and Annie Mac Vest, the Executive Director of the Oklahoma Department of Emergency Management. I will echo Karen's housekeeping note. Just we want to make sure that there's also time for questions and answers, and we'll promise to get to as many of them during our time together. And then we'll be happy to work with Karen on answering any of those questions that we don't get to during our time together. So let's get started. This is always the fun part when you have to introduce your big boss. So Tim Cadogan, he is a world-class leader. He is the biggest believer in people helping people, one of Time 100's most influential people of 2025. He does not shy away from the hard stuff or the hard moments. He, in fact, runs towards them, and I'll let him tell you more about exactly what that means. And it's led and fueled by this personal commitment to always do his part. He is one of those leaders that leads from the front and just always shows up, which is why he wouldn't be anywhere else than here today. So without further ado, I will turn it over to Tim.
Well, thank you, Amanda. That was a very kind introduction. Hello, everybody. I hope you're doing well today. I actually just wanted to add my thanks to you for your time today. I know that you have a lot on your plates, and the work of emergency management, preparedness, and response is extraordinarily demanding, vital, and sometimes all-consuming. The preparation side, of course, but in response moments, it is truly all-consuming. Aside from my work at GoFundMe, I have a little bit of experience because I've been a search and rescue volunteer for 15 years. And that's for Sierra Madre Search and Rescue, which is in LA County. We mainly respond to LA County incidents in the mountains, but sometimes we get called by Cal OES in statewide response. I don't know if there's anyone from Cal OES on the phone here, but I just want to say that really appreciate what you do in all of the different states. And it's a privilege to be able to serve and be involved in those responses when necessary. From a GoFundMe point of view, I'm just going to give a very quick overview. We have a very simple mission at GoFundMe, which is to help people help each other. We've been reasonably successful in making progress on that over the last 15 years. We just passed $40 billion raised for individuals and for nonprofit organizations. And crisis is a really important part of what we do. It's actually a minority of the fundraising. Some people might think it's the majority. It's actually the minority of the fundraising. But when it happens, it's incredibly important that we are there and providing a element of the support that people need in a crisis moment. And I think it's really important to emphasize that it's a component. There is a very big, complex answer, which requires many different services, state, federal government, nonprofits, and individual support all have a really important role to play. And we hope and we aspire and we continue to endeavor to play our part alongside you and other state and federal officials in a really effective way. I'll just touch on the LA wildfires because I think we're going to talk about that as an example. And we obviously have representatives from several of the other organizations who've done amazing work in that situation. As I just mentioned, I'm a volunteer in LA County, so you can guess I live in LA. I actually live in Altadena, right next to Eden Canyon, where the fire started. So I had a very direct exposure to this particular disaster. I've overseen about 100 disaster responses since I've been at GoFundMe, about 5 years. This one was by far the closest to home. If you were to summarize how we were able to help, we were able to enable families to raise about $250 million of support in about a month. Now that's 10,000 families, local businesses, schools, churches, and also nonprofit organizations. And those nonprofit organizations were major national orgs like the Salvation Army, the World Central Kitchen, Team Rubicon, but also really important local organizations. And Jamie is here from Pasadena Humane, and I had the good luck to be able to go and do a site visit and see the amazing and thoughtful work that you were doing, taking care of people's pets and many strays of all kinds of animals, cats, dogs, and lots of other kinds of animals, including, I think you had a stray goldfish, which I think is a first. But it's really that mosaic of support that was so important, because for our community, people were in a tremendous amount of stress and trauma and really needed everything. They needed a place to stay. They needed immediate cash. In many cases, they needed food. They needed water. They needed a place to stay. And they needed psychological support as well and advice. And that is a pattern that repeats itself in nearly all the crises that occur, whether they be in our country or in other countries. And you may not know, but we operate in 20 countries. So we respond to crises there. So that's a very high level summary, and Amanda will go into a little bit more of some of the things that we were able to do. And I think the point of this session and sessions like it is we are here to do this in partnership. We are a part of the response, and we want to make sure that we're understanding what you need, hopefully in advance, and that if, and you know, hopefully not, but if something were to happen that were comparable to what has happened recently here in LA, that we know how to work together when that situation arises, and we understand the respective skills and abilities that our organizations bring so that we can partner really effectively to help our communities that are impacted. So that's the goal of this session. That's how we see our role in this. And it's a real privilege for us to be able to do this for folks. And so thank you for the time. And I'll hand the mic back to Amanda.
Thank you, Tim. As always, thank you. Thank you for showing up. Thank you for all that you do in all of the ways for GoFundMe, but just people in generally. So thank you. We at GoFundMe have this sort of motto, right? That connection is preparation, and we lean into that all of the time. And it is opportunities and really connections like this, these formats that allow us to build the trust and rapport that are just foundational to relationships. We never want the first time that you hear from us to be in the aftermath of a disaster. And we also don't just want to interact in those moments of tragedy. So next slide, please. You have probably heard of GoFundMe before, but I'm going to spend the next chunk of time sharing information on GoFundMe so that you know more about how we work, our commitments, and also our team. Please, please, please feel free to chime in with questions as well. We have folks that are monitoring for that, so we will get to them at the end. GoFundMe was founded back in 2010, and as Tim alluded to, we are celebrating our 15-year anniversary this year. We had lots of birthday celebrations last month, and in that time, we have facilitated $40 billion of help. $40 billion, just really incredible. Our superpower really is in connecting people's stories with fundraising. And we believe that people are the experts of their own lives and really want to empower them to say what they need, when they need it, and then feel the support of their community feel the support when their community shows up for them. We are committed to making it simple and free to start a GoFundMe and work really closely with the organizers to make sure that they are the most successful in their fundraising campaigns. We do that in a number of different ways, which we'll get into. You can go to the next slide. Here is some quick background on GoFundMe. Sorry, one more slide. We are a global company. We're based in San Diego, have offices San Francisco, Los Angeles, Chicago, Dublin, Sydney, and process donations from around the world. We support 20 different countries where we're able to send money, but have literally been able to receive donations from over 215 countries. And as I said before, that has enabled $40 billion of help from 300 million donations. Next slide. Some of our highlights just demonstrating the incredible generosity of people across the world who have helped each other help people help each other through the platform. Our mission is very simple. Help people help each other, and we are so proud to be able to stand behind this mission in all that we do every single day. Next slide. GoFundMe plays a critical role, you can go one more slide, plays a critical role in supporting the response to disaster moments, whether natural or weather-related disasters or other crisis events. And it is the ability to facilitate quick financial support, often as a bridge to when people are able to receive the government funding or when insurance kicks in or some other sort of long-term assistance with their recovery. The sort of GoFundMe superpower is that lifeline to survivors in the immediate hours and days and weeks following a tragic event. We take our role super seriously, and I'm really grateful to be on this call with so many leaders who are raising their hands, also running into these moments to be able to help and showing up as leaders during these moments of true crisis for folks who need it. And we all do that time and time again. And it's just something that is such important work. And again, a huge amount of gratitude for all of you who do this every single day. One more slide. So today I'm going to speak about the core elements of our crisis response playbook. That includes our crisis hubs and verification, our trust and safety commitments and team, our amplification strategies, and then a little bit more about GoFundMe.org. I will also share a case study from the LA wildfire response so we can dig in more on that and use that example as a way to demonstrate how we leverage partnerships and relationships in advancing our goal of getting help to people and organizations super quickly in the wake of a crisis. Next slide. During our crisis response, we will oftentimes launch a hub to house the verified fundraisers. So people can be confident that they are giving to impacted people or to the organizations helping with the disaster response and mobilizing for that specific disaster. Our team is reviewing fundraisers as quickly as possible as soon as they are published, and we are getting in touch with the organizers to confirm the use of funds, the flow of funds, identify and understand the relationship to the beneficiary, if it's a person, particularly if it's a person different than the organizer, a business, or a charity. We are looking for copycats, catching misuse, all of the things. We will hold the funds and do not release the money until we have completed the verification process and confirmed the beneficiary through a Know Your Customer process. That checkpoint is really important to us. I will be very clear when I say this one. We have a zero tolerance for misuse on the platform, zero tolerance. And in the very rare case that it does happen, we will refund donations and take swift action to remove that fundraiser, but also to determine if the organizer needs to be banned from the platform entirely. Next slide. Being a safe and trusted place to give and to receive help is our top priority. We have over 80 employees dedicated to safeguarding the platform and also our users, specifically the organizers and also the donors who are coming to support these causes. The sort of components of our system are it's human first. So we have a world-class team of experts on our trust and safety team and our risk and compliance teams who are working literally around the clock to review fundraisers and prevent this misuse. We are employing technology as much as possible. So based on the fact that we have processed so many donations, enabled so much help to be able to be moved through the platform, we have learned a lot and are able to leverage technology to be a resource to us in that. Our banking partners, that's another resource for us. So they are conducting additional checks alongside the ones that we have in place, again, all to ensure that the funds, when they are released to the beneficiary, or that they are released to the beneficiary only after all of the verifications have been completed. And then finally, reporting a fundraiser, because anyone at any point should be able to do that. So we have systems in place allowing people to come and report the fundraiser, whether or not you are a donor to that fundraiser page. And people can use that tool resource if they have unanswered questions or concerns, and that will flag it so that our team promptly reviews it. Next slide. We, again, take a lot of pride in our processes and controls and are constantly innovating to meet the times that we live in and to make sure that the trust and safety of our platform is the just foundation to our success. And so we do offer the GoFundMe giving guarantee, and this is a protection that will refund donors in the rare case that something just is not right. Next slide. People oftentimes have questions about pricing and how GoFundMe works. So to sort of set the record straight here, it is always free to set up a fundraiser. We want to make it super simple and sort of take the friction or fear or fees out of that being sort of a blocker or an obstacle. We do collect a standard transaction fee, which is 2.9% plus 30 cents per donation. It is slightly lower if you are making a donation to a nonprofit on the platform. And that fee just helps us pay the payment processors who, again, are partners in safely delivering the funds. GoFundMe is primarily powered by voluntary tips, and we rely on those completely optional contributions from donors to maintain our quality customer service, our trust and safety protections that I was just speaking about, and enable a world-class fundraising technology that we are constantly innovating to make sure that it is, in fact, world-class, best in class. Next slide. On amplification, so this is a really important piece of our crisis response, is just making sure that people are aware and have the direct link to our crisis hubs. We will share the stories here of the individuals and the organizations that are raising money on the GoFundMe platform. And these are the verified stories. So we have an incredible communications team that is dedicated to amplifying fundraisers through national and local media. We have a digital team that is putting it all over social media just to get the information out far and wide. Oftentimes, we will partner with influencers or creators to increase our reach even more as well. We are promoting the Crisis Hub and these stories, and we will work to educate the reporters about our trust and safety features, the platform's operations, so that viewers, when they get to this page, can feel really confident in donating. I'm always amazed at how in some of the darkest moments, people show up. You see such goodness and such kindness in these moments, and people from across the globe want to be helpful. And so they flock to GoFundMe, and our ability to serve them this hub just makes it a lot easier for people to find and navigate to trusted and verified stories on the platform. Next slide. Really quickly on GoFundMe.org. So, GoFundMe.org is an independent 501c3 organization that was launched in 2017. It is a vehicle that allows for tax-deductible charitable donations to come in, and then we turn those donations into fast, direct relief for people in a moment of crisis. It is a highly efficient organization, thanks in much to the partnership with GoFundMe.com. So we are allowed, and that enables us to make these cash grants both on and off the platform to people in need, really working hard to get it to the most vulnerable folks who have been impacted in these moments. We will host our own funds, but we will also support funds on behalf of our partners who also are turning to us when they want to respond to an emergency or even just need help carrying out their philanthropic mission. Next slide. We're going to dig into the LA wildfires. So I want again to use this case study of a recent disaster response effort just to showcase the ways in which we show up, how we partner with communities and community organizations to really maximize our impact and ultimately help more people get all of the help that they need in these moments. Next slide. So we immediately activated our crisis playbook. Literally, as soon as the news of the fires broke, we launched a hub and began to verify fundraisers. We worked really closely with public officials to educate them and also the general public, their constituents, about how GoFundMe works, sort of giving them all of the spiel that I was just sharing. We want to make sure that they understand how GoFundMe is mobilizing and responding in that moment. And then alongside of that, GoFundMe.org was raising money into the General Wildfire Relief Fund. And we were able to start making cash grants to people within 24 hours of the fire starting. Next slide. One of the examples that I wanted to share was how we partnered with ground up community-led efforts, really rallying help for their communities, in many cases, sort of targeted constituent-specific communities. So you might have seen this, but as the scope of the fires became evident, there were a number of organizers, some who have sort of a traditional role as a community organizers and some who just like stepped in to help in these moments. But they started a spreadsheet where they were collecting GoFundMe fundraiser links for members of these communities. So there was a displaced Black families spreadsheet. There was a displaced Latino family spreadsheet. There was one for the teachers who had been impacted. Elaine Welteroth, who runs an organization for postpartum, she started one for pregnant people and postpartum families. And these lists were just spreading virally on social media, which again allowed other people the sort of visibility to be able to respond. And they had local reach, but also ultimately global reach. And so we saw that happening really fast. It was organic, it was grassroots. And again, it was very fast. And so we reached out to open lines of communication and started to convene calls with the organizers of these spreadsheets. to be able to help them with the tracking, with the amplification, to be able to affirm for them if there were any problems that we were running into as we tried to verify the fundraisers. We tried to be a liaison to them, but also help them be a liaison to their communities. We were hosting webinars and worked with the organizers and owners of these spreadsheets to then get more information to the people who were on the spreadsheets. We created resources, including a crisis fundraising playbook, which I can link to later. We made a video on raising funds during a crisis. We had Q&A regarding frequently asked questions, particularly as it relates to GoFundMe support and FEMA support, and how those two interact. Again, all in an effort to make sure that people who were facing this very dark moment had all of the information to get help. GoFundMe.org was able to directly partner with some of these spreadsheet organizers who started to raise money on top of what was happening in those fundraisers so that we could then channel that viral energy and the funds coming in to get it back to those to the fundraisers that had made it onto their spreadsheets and aid those specific communities. One of the examples that I will also share is the picture at the bottom of this page, which was a partnership between GoFundMe.org and the Altadena Town Council. We launched the Altadena Eaton Fire Relief Fund because they, as a town council, needed a charitable vehicle to help drive funds into their own community to be able to support the work of the nonprofits mobilizing, but also to help individuals who had been impacted. And it is community-led efforts like these. They, are ongoing and in many cases really working on filling the gaps that we know folks have. But for us, it's about also letting the folks who are most familiar and closest to the pain is a line that I used like to say, to let them lead in these moments. And we know that as the media coverage dims, so does the incoming money. And so it's really important for us to be able to work hand in hand with the people on the ground in the communities. And we have a great deference, a great respect for all of you who are fielding that every single day and feeling it in real time, and want to make sure that we are a great resource to you, and have, definitely learned a lot of lessons from previous disasters. Next slide. I will sort of close this portion and just wrap here with a really lovely note that the GoFundMe.org team received from a grantee, just highlighting the impact that this type of help has on impacted communities. Again, that super quick, fast cash, letting people be the experts of their own lives and putting the sort of resources in their control and just getting it to them quickly. So with that, we'll sort of wrap this, and then it was really important to us to be able to bring in other voices to this conversation, so that it wasn't just the Tim and Amanda show, and wanted to make sure that you had the chance to hear and learn from other partners that we have worked with in the past too. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Maribel to speak how 211 LA led through the disaster response as well.
Thank you, Amanda, and thank you for having me join this group today. 211 is a 3-digit dial code similar to 911 and 411, but we answer non-life-threatening emergency calls, crisis calls from individuals experiencing homelessness, domestic violence, and other types of crisis situations. 211 is a service that's available across the United States and Canada. In Los Angeles, 211 LA is a nonprofit organization that's been around since 1981, so about 44 years, serving the residents of LA County. And in addition to the 24/7 services that we provide to residents, we also serve as the county's disaster information hotline. So during the wildfires, we were activated to begin providing support for calls, primarily for people who were being evacuated. Typically, 211 LA handles about 450,000 calls a year, and we maintain a database that contains about 50,000 services that are available to the residents of LA County. However, during disaster events, we work directly with the emergency service providers to get information to us so that our staff has real-time verified information. We don't rely on news or other unverified information sources, so that when we are providing referrals, we know that the information is accurate. During the wildfires, we received about 44,000 calls related to the fires. However, we received over 54,000 requests for assistance. So one of the early partnerships that 211 LA was able to establish, in fact, on the day that we were activated, was a partnership with Airbnb. On January 7th, we had an agreement to provide housing to 100 households. Well, in less than a week, that number went up to 10,000 households. And at that point, Hilton came in and allowed us to house another 5,000 households. And this was households that included over 150 people and 37,000 pets. And this was a really important resource that hasn't been available in previous disasters. It was so important to have this type of housing because typically what happens during a disaster is that you'll get the congregate type shelters set up pretty quickly by Red Cross. But these types of shelters are difficult for families who have pets and have small children or who have extended families. And we were seeing a lot of extended multi-generational families who had been evacuated. And the Airbnb solution was a much better option for them. We were able to get people quickly housed, and we continue to do extended stays for families who are still struggling to find housing support. So right now we have about, I'm sorry, can we go to the next slide? Right now, we have about 4,000 families who continue to be part of our care coordination program, like Rocio Jacobo's family, who was impacted. They were renting in the Eaton Fire area, and Rocio's husband is a gardener. He was unemployed during the fire events because many of his customers were in the evacuated areas, and Rocio herself had to stop working because she needed to take care of her son who has a disability. So this is a typical situation that we were encountering. A lot of renters who not only were displaced from their home, but lost their jobs. And so one of the more important needs was immediate cash assistance. So we were very fortunate to connect with GoFundMe, who enabled us to very quickly provide financial grants to about 500 families. And it was, one of the very critical resources that we had available to the families that we were working with. The fires themselves, lasted, I would say, about 2 weeks, and the families were initially housed for 7 days. And so it was really important for us to be very closely engaged with our Airbnb and Hilton partners, because it became very apparent quickly on that we needed to extend those week stays to multiple weeks. And that's when we started care coordination, because 211 typically does not provide care coordination during disaster events. but it became necessary in this particular one because people were displaced for such a long time. And so now there are many people who have self-resolved, and there's folks who have been supported by FEMA. But again, we are working with a group that is primarily renters. About 75% of the cases we have are renters. Many of them were living in ADUs or what a lot of people call back houses. And what we are learning is that, while the homeowner gets support for the loss, the renters really are on their own to figure it out. So we are working with community groups and the county and other organizations to try and figure out how to help these families as solutions are coming into play. Obviously, the cities and the county are working very hard on making sure that homeowners can get back onto their properties and begin the rebuilding process. But for renters, it's just a really tough market. The housing, the affordable housing situation in LA is already a challenge, with a huge number of displaced people moving into vacant units. This became even harder. So our job primarily now is to help figure out the housing situation. So next slide. So you see a QR code here in the corner. If you are interested in learning more about the families, their demographics, what the difference in the situations between the homeowners and the renters, you click on that code and you'll see our dashboard. It has a lot of information around what the 4,000 households are experiencing, what their family composition is, what their income level is. And again, what we are struggling with right now is that many of them were paying very below market rates in these ADUs and back houses, and now are encountering rental prices that are 2 and 3 times what they were paying, and also a very tough competitive market with lots of people vying for the same unit, especially in and around the fire areas. We do have still some Airbnb extensions. Some of them are outside of the burn areas, and most of our families really want to stay in the area. They have community there. They have family, doctors, schools. So we're hoping that maybe by the time the schools are over, that we'll be able to move people a little farther out and get them a little more stabilized. But it is a challenge that continues for us, and we're very grateful that we have partners who continue to support us, because the media has moved away now to other disasters and other news. And yet the families that we're working with are still struggling and challenged with the impact of the displacement. So thank you very much to Airbnb for coming to the rescue of our families. They also provided 211 LA with operational support. As I said, 211 typically is not a care coordination provider during disaster. We do provide care coordination in other areas, but this kind of became something that was immediately necessary. And with the help of the American Red Cross, we're able to continue supporting these families, and we'll be able to continue doing it through the remainder of the year. So thank you very much for having me join you today and share the experience of 211 and what our role was during this event. And now I'm passing on to Jamie Holman from Pasadena Humane.
Hi, everybody, and thank you for having me here today. I'll share a little bit first about Pasadena Humane. So we are a private nonprofit animal shelter located in Pasadena, California, and we have 11 animal care and control contracts, including Altadena, which was the area hardest hit by the Eaton fire. So we provide animal sheltering, pet adoption services, and a lot of community support services, including disaster response in times of emergency. Next slide, please. I wanted to start off my presentation with one of the animals that we helped during the fire, and this is a Skinny Minnie. So Skinny Minnie was found in Altadena the day after the Eaton fire broke out, and she was brought to our shelter in need of emergency medical care. Her body was covered, over half of her body was covered in really, really severe burns, and she was in incredible pain, and she had suffered from really severe smoke inhalation, so she was having trouble breathing. She needed to be put in the oxygen kennel to help with her breathing. And it was really unclear in the beginning if she was going to make it. But animals are truly, truly resilient. And she pulled through. It was a rough, couple of days at first, and she pulled through. She's became one of the many faces, one of the many animal faces of the Eaton fire. And she's pictured here with celebrity Adrian Brody, who came to the shelter a couple weeks after the fire to volunteer. And he spent some time with Skinny Minnie, who we then called Hope because we didn't know her true identity, in our animal ICU where so many of the animals were treated. Next slide, please. I wanted to give a little bit of context on the Eaton fire for those who aren't familiar. So the Eaton fire broke out on the night of January 7th in Altadena, the Altadena-Pasadena area. Over 100,000 residents were evacuated from their homes due to that fire, with more than 20,000 structures evacuated. After the fire was put out, it was about a little over 9,000 or over 9,400 structures had been destroyed. Most of those were family homes. And what made this fire kind of unique for our area, so our shelter, it's in Pasadena, we service a lot of foothill communities where wildfires are not uncommon, but typically they stay very close to the foothills or into the mountains. This fire came really far down into the community and burned homes that had been in the area for over 100 years. So these were areas that were, while they may have been, I guess, obviously prone to fire, they were not areas that we would have assumed would have been affected by a wildfire. And the fire came down really, really fast. There was incredibly strong winds that evening, wind gusts of over 100 miles per hour. And so a lot of people were evacuating with very little warning. In many cases, we heard stories from folks who were evacuating as their house or as their street was on fire. And this led to many animals where people were fleeing with their pets with just their clothes on their back and their animals. They didn't have their pet supplies with them. And then we also learned of many animals who had been left behind, either because their owners weren't home or the evacuation happened so fast and their owners couldn't find their pets as they were evacuating. And then there were livestock and exotics that were left behind as well in the area due to the speed of the fire. The Eaton fire was concentrated in our animal control service area, so mainly in Altadena, but it also affected small parts of Pasadena and Sierra Madre as well. Next slide, please. So during the Eaton fire disaster, we responded in several ways. Pasadena Humane spearheaded field efforts with LA County Animal Care and Control. So we sent fire-trained search and rescue teams behind fire lines to rescue and care for animals in need. And we established an animal rescue hotline where displaced residents, first responders, anybody who needed help with animals trapped behind fire lines could get that help. We partnered with first responder agencies to transport critically injured animals back to the shelter for care. And I want to emphasize it wasn't just dogs or cats that we were responding to. There were a lot of livestock, exotics left behind. We evacuated more koi ponds than I think we knew existed. And while Altadena is in LA County, there are parts of it that kind of have a little bit of a rural feel. So there were a lot of horses, a lot of chickens, goats, pigs, and other livestock living on properties there. Additionally, we were an evacuation center for most animals affected by the fire. So that was lost, found, and owned animals. We also offered free emergency boarding for owned pets whose families were evacuated in the fire areas. We offered lost and found services. So we reunited lost pets with their owners at the shelter and in the field. A big part of our emergency response out in the community was actually responding to calls from owners whose pets were trapped behind fire lines. So in houses that were still existing but were in evacuation areas, we were given the keys and we could go get the pets and reunite them with their owners, or for animals that were at properties that no longer existed to go and to see if the pets had survived. We also have an ICU on site at the shelter, and it was turned into a burn ward. And so we provided extensive free veterinary care to dozens of badly burned animals coming into the shelter. And then finally, we expanded our pet food pantry to operate 7 days a week and provided free food, pet food, and essential pet supplies to anyone displaced by the fires who needed support. Like, as I mentioned before, a lot of people evacuated with no notice. And so there was a huge demand for pet supplies in the days and weeks following the fire. Next slide, please. So these are just some of the impact for the first month after the fire. So we sheltered over 1,000 animals in that first month, and that includes animals that were with us for emergency boarding, animals who got lost during the fire, and owned animals who were surrendered as a result of the fire, as well as other reasons. We reunited over 1,500 pets with their families at the shelter and then out in the community. We offered emergency boarding for 563 animals. And then we also were one of 2 shelters in Southern California that are permitted to rehabilitate and release wildlife. And so we took in 86 wild animals that represented 45 different species, including bobcats, which were pictured. There's a bobcat pictured here. We took in 3 bobcats in the month following the fire, which is how many we normally take in a year. So we were seeing a lot of displaced and injured wildlife coming in as a result of the fire. Next slide, please. In order to have a response of this size, it really took a wide-ranging community effort. So we worked with shelters across California and some national animal welfare organizations to help us in different ways. So one of the first things that we did after the fire was all of the animals who had been at the shelter for adoption prior to the breakout of the fire were transferred to partner shelters throughout the state of California. And this enabled us to have the kennel space to care for all the animals that were coming in. And then we worked with different organizations who sent volunteers to help us ensure that all the animals that were in our care were able to get some TLC and time out of their kennel while they waited to be reclaimed by their families. We had help on the field response side. We partnered with fire-trained animal search and rescue teams from across the state and across the country. We had a huge outpouring of volunteers who came in to help us care for the animals. And then we had veterinary professionals from private clinics, other shelters, and we have a veterinary school in our area come and help us provide top-notch veterinary care to all of the animals that needed medical care following the fires. Next slide, please. And our response was really only possible due to the generosity of our amazing community. So within a week of the fire, we had received over 10,000 volunteer and foster applications from community members. People were so eager and willing to help in whatever way they could. and it was incredibly amazing. We had a lot of celebrities that came to amplify the work that we were doing and to help us get the word out about people who, like, for what people, excuse me, to help reunite pets who were lost and to help showcase the animals that were in need at the shelter, including Paris Hilton here, who fostered a dog named Zuzu that was displaced by the fire. There was a lot of small fundraisers, including this little boy here who started a lemonade stand and raised funds to help our wildfire response efforts. And the other thing that we saw was an absolute outpouring of supplies being donated to the shelter, and those went directly back into the community. As I mentioned before, we extended the hours of our pet food pantry to ensure that every pet owner in our community and beyond who needed supplies had access to them following the fire. The other area where we saw incredible generosity was through monetary donations. Our online giving platform is powered by GoFundMe Pro. Our website actually crashed in right after the fire because we were receiving so much traffic. But the GoFundMe Pro's online donation form stayed up, and that was really invaluable for us. We also saw a proliferation of individual GoFundMe fundraisers for our organization, which was a really great way for individual community members to start fundraisers on our behalf. And the GoFundMe team in general were just incredibly supportive of our work. As Tim mentioned at the beginning of the presentation, they came to visit and to volunteer at the shelter. They provided us with marketing and PR support and really helped connect us to additional fundraising opportunities to help support the work that we were doing. Next slide, please. So I started with Skinny Minnie when she came in and was injured, and this is her today. So after 4 months of intensive medical care and multiple surgeries with us, she finally was recovered enough and well enough to go home with her family. So her family is pictured here on the right, Mark and Lisa. They were able to identify her in our care after she was with us for a month. And it was a really, really beautiful homecoming that was only made possible thanks to the generosity of our supporters and our community members and to organizations like GoFundMe. So that is it for me. Thank you very, very much. And I'm going to pass it on to Annie.
Well, thank you, everyone. And I see a few from Oklahoma on the line. So hello, and I'll see you guys soon. Go ahead to the next slide. Representing state government, I wanted to make sure that I could add on really what our perspective is in terms of funding. So hearing from the local perspective of the catastrophic wildfires that all of us saw from every part of the nation, to really understanding that state disasters look a lot different depending on state by state, community by community. In Oklahoma, we are the fourth in the nation for federally declared disasters. So since January of 2024, we've had 4 federally declared disasters. We're working on our 5th right now, and we've had 16 fire management assistance grants. And so we're not, knock on wood, ever going to see something that impacts hundreds of thousands of structures at the same time. But what our state does is we constantly run. Sulphur, Oklahoma occurred last year. It was an EF4 or high-end EF3 tornado that came through, and that's in the southeast part of the state, and you can see the devastation. That's their downtown area that you see on the pictures, along with a flooded property. And if you were to go to downtown Sulphur today, the debris would be gone, but the buildings remain dilapidated, and there's tremendous amounts of things undone. You don't see this even though the Weather Channel was there and CNN was there and everyone was there, because months after, the media goes away and goes to the next disaster and that community remains. Next slide. a week after Sulphur hit, Barnstall tornado hit, and you can see the man in the white t-shirt is the mayor, and then that's Senator Langford and his wife that are there in Barnstall. And we were able to get this disaster added on to the Sulphur tornado. Had we not been able to do that, Barnstall would not have been declared. And this town is a town of about a couple thousand people in Northeast Oklahoma. It was actually the second time in 2024 that it had gotten impacted by a tornado. And when the tornado came through, it took out a good portion of the town. And just for some perspective on how long the recovery ends up taking, the community is just now seeing its first properties being rebuilt in Barnstall. And for the most part, that means that they're putting a trailer on their land. And so these communities are still struggling. And to add a little bit more of a complex situation when you're looking years down the line of community recovery, we think about now the turning environment in our profession. One of the things that I would not have ever guessed that I would be saying is that I couldn't rely on FEMA to come in the process that we've had to come in and provide assistance. I can't tell you right now what it takes to get a disaster in Oklahoma. I can just tell you that we do damage assessments and we hope that we can bring resources to people as they need them. Go ahead to the next slide. We knew that coming into 2025 that things were going to be a little bit different. We had a tornado event that came through in the February-March timeframe that was far too small to get a FEMA declaration. And we ended up getting SBA, Small Business Administration assistance. Fast forward to a few weeks later, we had a historic wildfire forecast. We knew for about a week that the fires were going to be bad, and we were planning for the fires to occur. Typically, Oklahoma has a threshold for FEMA's public assistance program of $7.5 million, and individual assistance is roughly 400 structures that are major or destroyed. When the fires occurred and we started thinking about the impacts, statewide, we had over 600 structures that were entirely destroyed and thousands that were impacted. And it wasn't just a fire event, it was also a wind event. And when that occurs, we have damages ranging from your awnings are impacted to your roof is blown off, various levels. We struggled, and I personally struggled in my role as the state director during this time because I needed to be able to articulate to the public what they could expect. As soon as disasters occur, as many of you know, everyone thinks FEMA is in town. People think we're FEMA, and we're not. And so as soon as the fires occurred, we did begin to ask FEMA to come in and do joint damage assessments with us, but also understanding that it was a very rare opportunity that we were going to get federal assistance. I recall being intentional in the press conferences in the damaged areas those next days, being very intentional to try to manage the expectation of the public and let them know that it was going to be a long shot that we would get assistance. Around the same time, we received a denial letter from FEMA denying individual assistance in an area that had been very heavily impacted by an EF3 tornado in the Oklahoma City metro area. And so when we received that denial, that added a little bit more of a concern that we would see denials for the wildfires. To compare the wildfires to the Sulphur and Barnstall tornadoes, the wildfires themselves impacted 3 times the amount of structures that the tornadoes had impacted the prior year. And so what would have maybe been what we would consider a shoe-in for a disaster in 2024 was not in 2025. We just received our approval letter for the March wildfires on May 21st. So individuals were left to wait for a period of time. And when you start thinking about the role of emergency management and the role of government during these disasters, it was really important to me and to my staff and to our state leaders that we still be there, and that if there's a disaster, regardless of the size, that we do have a role. Go ahead to the next slide. So the wildfires, fortunately, for a few months, I had been thinking about a world where federal assistance didn't exist. And the tornado that had come through a few months prior really struck me because it wasn't bad enough. And when you start using the language of bad enough, that really harms the community. It harms the people because bad enough is just one person being impacted. And so, in terms of looking at how the state could respond, especially in this time in emergency management where the administration is really looking at states to have the capability, to have the capacity to step in, we started to look at things a little bit differently. We activated our recovery support functions during the initial response, and rather than waiting for a multi-agency resource center with the voluntary organizations, we actually stood up a state resource center a few days after the event that had our different recovery support functions, our Health and Human Services, Department of Transportation, Department of Environmental Quality, those that really could look at those individuals right then and there and at least start to get them back on their feet. We use things like our Department of Health and Human Services to come in and provide vital record support. We had our Service Oklahoma to provide driver's licenses, just things that we knew that individuals were going to need no matter what to get going. Within a few days of the event, fortunately, we started to have people reaching out to us. I think fires are fortunately or unfortunately, they're newsworthy. And the more news and attention that we receive for these events, the more national resources came in. So for the first time, Airbnb reached out to us to provide similar response, sheltering availability that they did in the California fires. And we're fortunate to have a really great arm of 211 in the Tulsa area and in Oklahoma that was able to support individuals getting into housing for 30 days if they needed it. And that's something that even if FEMA would have come in, we would not have been able to provide. And so it's something that will now be a tool in our toolbox to know that we can reach out and request something similar to that be turned on. And not too long after Airbnb reached out, our friends at GoFundMe reached out. And funding individual resources post-event has been a challenge. We have a lot of individuals that will reach out to the governor's office or to me personally, to our staff and say, where can I donate funds? And they don't always want to donate to the big funding resources. They often want to make sure that they know who they're donating to, what they're donating for. And GoFundMe was able to set up a website where they could verify each of those GoFundMe sites. And our director of Homeland Security for Oklahoma, his best friend was actually impacted by the fires. Their house burned down. And as soon as I shared that site out, as soon as we shared the GoFundMe site on our emergency management pages, he reached out to me and said, hey, can you make sure my friends is verified? And so we were able to get people to a point where we trusted where they were donating. We could easily share that out and just have another vehicle for sharing opportunities for individuals to get funding. And I will say beyond just the opportunity to trust where the funding was going, it also provides a good opportunity from a co-branding marketing standpoint to try to draw more attention into the event itself. Trusted partners, trusted advocates, those are entities that we're constantly seeking. And the more people you bring to the table, even if right away you can't think about how it might benefit the event directly, it's just another tool that connection you make, the resource they bring, it might be something you need to pull out later on down the road. Next slide. So what are we doing now in terms of federal assistance? It's been a challenge to really think through what the state does and what it might do. But coming from the community level, I've had a lot of experience doing plans in the past, and emergency management really just needs to transition a little bit on how we think. We've been reliant on FEMA for so long. It's just part of our DNA in emergency management that we'll have an event, we'll do the damage assessments, and then we'll move forward. Not every community can possibly think to recover without federal assistance. And as tacky as it might sound in terms of it's all about who you know, it really is about who you know in this space. The whole community approach to planning that happens before the event is really important. Making sure that we're actually planning for recovery. A recovery plan right now for emergency management is typically a debris management plan that used to get communities a discount on their cost share for debris removal. We don't see a tremendous amount of good recovery planning going on. Oftentimes that happens after the event. But what happens when you lose sales tax in your community and you can't recover? What happens when homes are leveled? What happens when infrastructure is destroyed? What would have happened in California if we didn't have federal assistance that would have come in? And we can identify these things before the event. Some of the things in Oklahoma that we have done and have the opportunity to really expand on. One, again, is to build equal partners with our recovery support functions. It's amazing when we have conversations with other state agencies when we didn't know the resources that they could bring to bear. For example, our Department of Transportation, as long as we're under a state of emergency, has the ability to come in and help clear debris. And that's something that we take for granted, but it's something that helps a tremendous amount. The quicker you clean the debris after an event, the sooner that people see somebody is there helping. We have a Oklahoma Housing Authority that was able to provide $1,000 to those that had their house impacted by the wildfires. $1,000 doesn't seem like a lot, but it's a tremendous amount of a resource, something tangible that the survivor can see right away after an event. In Oklahoma, we have the IBHS, the Insurance Institute for Building and Home Safety. Individuals that build to a higher building standard will not only not be impacted by certain levels of wind events, hail events in Oklahoma, but they also get an insurance discount on their insurance premiums for their property. So a lot of various things that can be done prior to the event. And it's really important with the communities that when we continue to think about looking ahead, we plan for no assistance. I've had to have this conversation in Oklahoma with our local emergency managers, and I have it with our elected officials. It's up to us. Every community has the ability to go ahead and start thinking through these things. Next slide. And so what are some of the things that I'm referring to that communities can actually do here and now? And it's a little bit outside of the typical day-to-day of the emergency manager. And so it's really important for us to make sure that we understand as emergency managers that any sort of silos, any sort of lanes, now is the time that we have to make sure that those are done away with. Because if we have lanes built, if we have silos built at the community level, at the state level, we're never going to be able to succeed without some of the federal entities coming in and helping us with that assistance. So in terms of some of the things that we can do, every community of a certain size, and hopefully most, have some sort of comprehensive plan, really thinking at the front end of development on how to include resilience in emergency management, and not just as a reference, but as a true partner in developing out that community, where you build, how you build. In capital programs, a lot of communities are already funding mitigation. It's amazing when we start talking about really looking at a hazard mitigation plan and understanding emergency managers and what they say they're doing when they actually start bringing in their public works officials, their community planners. A lot of the things they need to do to reduce risk are already being done in their capital projects. Integrating more of that funding opportunity into their general funds. There's legal authorities to do things at the community level to actually use the funds that they have for good mitigation investment. And so making sure that we're looking at the ability to reduce risk with those funds instead of coming in afterwards to pay for projects. Integrating stormwater and utility fees, considering in some of the areas that might qualify tax incremental finance districts, TIF districts, to allow for some of the areas that need it to have investment long-term, integrating mitigation into that. Public-private partnerships. This is one thing that I don't know that all emergency management does well. Certainly our state agency needs to do a lot better at this and really forming and solidifying public-private partnerships like Airbnb, GoFundMe. We have other entities that reach out to us Walmart reaches out to me every single time we have a risk for severe weather. It truly is a all hands on deck, everybody together in order to actually make it through these events. And then finally, the nonprofit partners, I didn't specifically mention them, but if we have, I know emergency management's been considered a three-legged stool before, but if we have another leg to how many legs are on this stool now, it's the VOAD communities or the VOAD partners that we have. The Red Cross during our wildfires actually elevated up to their highest level of an event. So they responded to us the way they would have responded to California, for example, and that made a huge difference. We were able to get funding sooner out the door. Baptist Men that clears debris off of properties, really understanding that there's not an opportunity without the federal government coming in for us to turn away those that are trying to come in and help. Let the people come in, help, find the people that are going to be the hub for the recovery. Without FEMA, it's an interesting concept to think, can we do it? But emergency management, we have to do it. And so really thinking outside the box and beyond to allow FEMA to no longer be the spear of everything we do, but kind of be that back end in case we actually need it, is how we're going to have to start thinking about it. And I think that is my last slide, and I'll turn it over to Amanda.
Annie, thank you so much for sharing and also for being here. We know that you are on leave, so I hope that you hang up and go cuddle your baby, but really appreciate your time here. Jamie, Maribel, obviously, huge thank you to you for joining us, and to everyone at NEMA for making the time and hanging with us for an extra 12 minutes. I will wrap us only because I know that folks have other things to do, and we will make sure that the questions that have come in, we are able to answer in a follow-up. I'm trusting that Karen will help me figure out that piece. And then if there are other questions, feel free to enter them into the chat. But really grateful for everyone's time, the sort of incredible work on the ground. You all know best, and we really appreciate you sharing your expertise and experience with us. We are committed to working with you, connecting with you, getting to know all of you in the emergency management, the Cool Kids Club. Emily and I were at NEMA, and we're trying to make as many friends as possible. So want to make sure that you know that we are here to help raise funds for individuals, organizations within your city, answer any questions or investigate fundraisers that don't seem right. Please just send them to us and we will look into it. Partnering to amplify the hubs of verified fundraisers, and of course, responding in lockstep when disasters occur. We also welcome literally any other ideas that you might have. You can go to the next slide, but hope that you are taking away the fact that we want to work with you during disaster, but also those blue sky moments that give us all hope. We are here to help. We are built to be helpers, meant to be helpers, and really committed to partnership with all of you. So next slide, just to say thank you again. You can contact us, community@gofundme.com, and Emily and I are always here to be helpful. So thank you so much for your time. Thank you, Karen. Thank you, Ashley. Really grateful, and hope everyone has a great rest of your Wednesday.
Thank you so much to GoFundMe for sponsoring today's session, and to Tim and Jamie, Maribel, Amanda, and Annie for sharing your expertise with us. Thank you also to the great audience for participating. You can find out more about the NEMA Empowerment e-learning series on the NEMA website. It's www.nemaweb.org. We're actually working on dates for season 4. So this actually wraps up our season 3. So we're extremely grateful. So we'll be sending out information on season 4 very soon. As a reminder, there'll be a short survey coming to your inbox probably tomorrow morning. So if you'd be on the lookout for that, as I mentioned before, we do use those comments to improve our series. So please be candid. The recording will be available on the NEMA YouTube channel, NEMA for You, in just a few weeks. Thank you again. Take care, stay well, and have a productive rest of your day. Oh, and as far as the Q&A goes, we will put together a list of all of the questions, send those around to the speakers, and we'll get a transcript out to you very soon. Thank you so much. Enjoy the rest of your day. Bye-bye, everyone.